Good morning and welcome back to the Social Housing Roundtable. This week I have the excellent Nasha Quatizzo with us to talk about fostering and social housing, looking at how to become a foster carer, but also looking at the support that's needed to better support foster carers, as there are many more than you think, and what we can be doing to better empower that sector. Really looking forward to today's sector. I think it could be really enlightening. So looking forward to running this one, and do keep in touch if you've only seen the recording and want to speak back later. Thanks. Yeah, good morning, everyone. I know Marie and Michael, we've already done a bit of an introduction. So Nasha, can I just get you kind of introduce yourself and talk through where the idea of today's roundtable came from?
I'm Nyasha Gwatizo, and I'm the founder of Banya Fostering Agency. It's an independent fostering agency based in London, but it's a national agency. And I just was talking to Matt about social housing and fostering, and some of the challenges we've faced with recruiting potential carers within the social housing sector. So I did a little bit of a presentation to just talk a bit about and what I feel that social housing can help in this sector.
And Marie was actually talking us through a moment ago about how there is, 2 weeks in May of fostering.
Yeah, fostering. Yeah, there's a fostering.
So, it'll be interesting to just kind of go through. Oh, that's Zoom. Go through some of the the points you want to make today, and I'm sure, rather than kind of be full presentation, Marie and Michael, if you want to kind of jump in at any point today, please feel free to, because I think there can be points as we go along to raise questions with, to understand.
Yes,
and certainly for Michael to understand a bit more about how the sector works as well. So Nasha, I'll pass over to you.
No problem. So a little bit about Banya. I've already said it's an independent fostering agency. We were established. I founded it in 1986. We've got about 170 fostering households, and we're looking after about 160 children today. And according to us, fostering is a form of parent. That means foster carers have got a unique chance to make a real difference to a child's life. And what is not, because sometimes people confuse fostering with adoption. Fostering is not adoption. On the other hand, it can be a permanent arrangement that involves taking on legal responsibility of child to reach childhood. What is the picture? This is just some statistics around UK. There's
Can you click on the actual thing itself? I can't see the slide then, Asha.
You can't see it?
Do you want to start the presentation? If you click on the actual start presentation, because it isn't coming up on the...
Can you see it now?
Yeah, double click on that one, and then we can kind of go through the full thing. But yeah, we can see it a bit better now.
Oh, okay. So there's, in England, there's about, I think now that number is a bit old, but during COVID, more children have come in the care system. So I wouldn't surprise me with about 60,000 children living in foster families. Not the same with Northern Ireland. The numbers have gone up since COVID due to mental health and domestic violence. That was the biggest. The number of children coming into care has really increased due to COVID. And why do children come into care? Family breakdown, neglect, abuse, family.
You need to be clicking on the slides on the left, because they're showing up on the right and we can see them close. We can't read the
Yeah,
that's better.
That's it. There are so many reasons why children come in the care system. And at the moment, we've got Ukraine, we've had Afghanistan, we've had Syria. Wars cause a lot of children coming into the care system in the UK. Because sometimes people think it's happening outside of UK, but the children end up in UK. Domestic violence, mental health, all those kind of things I've already mentioned. And foster carers can really offer a safe place for children and young people who are not, for whatever reason, are not able to live with their birth parents or their extended family for whatever reason. There's so many reasons, so many permutations about why children come in the care system. And living in a family is normally quite, in terms of local authority, that's the first choice in terms of placements, because it offers a positive experience for the child to experience the family life.
Can I just ask one question, Aisha?
Yeah.
Or maybe Marie. When you're looking at foster care, by the nature of the next slide, it doesn't have to be long-term until the child is 18. If a child was to go into foster care for whatever reason, what is the process for that child returning to their birth family? Would that be engagement with the social services, or would that be with the
yes, social service, the child belongs to the social services. They're the legal guardian, some of them, but some of it is voluntary. The parents still have the legal parental responsibility. So it's social services work with the parent or the grandmother or the uncle to go back into family. We offer an alternative placement while the local authority sort out whatever the problem is. Yes, we've had children who've gone back to their families, and they've gone back under what you call special guardianship, if it's or family kinship, or they've gone back to their birth parents. Whatever the problem was has been resolved.
And Marie, from your side,
my
Marie,
experience
you're with the local authorities. So from your side, how do you see it with partnering with businesses like Banya?
There's a
Yes,
26-week court process. So when a child comes into care, there's a 26-week where they go to the court the first time when they're brought into care, and you have to keep going back to court where decisions are being made of whether the child's going to go home to a parent, go to a grandparent or another family member, or whether they're going to go to adoption, or whether they're going to go to long-term fostering, because no children come into care on a long-term basis ever.
Marie, can you move your microphone up just a smidge? Sorry,
my microphone. Sorry.
No, that's
Can
right.
you hear it
Yeah,
now?
I can hear you much
Is that
better now.
better?
Yeah.
So no child comes into care on long term. They always come in on here. It says short term. We call it task centered, because if we say to people what's short term, some people will say a day. We mean up to 2 years. So it can be a long process if they go into adoption.
Yes.
It's a 26-week court process, but that can get extended if different things keep coming up and arising. So it can be extended. But in between, while that's happening, we're also assessing other family members like grandparents, maybe an aunt and uncle, for the child to go to as well if they can't go home to a parent. Because ultimately, if they can't go to back to their own parent, the next best thing is a family member rather than staying in care.
We've definitely had that experience. We've also had outcomes. When they've gone back to a parent, we've had children come back, and things have not worked out, and then family members have been assessed. We've had so many outcomes. We definitely have had a lot of adoption. Children have been prepared for, babies in particular. They've been
I found out recently my gran was actually an emergency foster carer way back when. My mum was young, back in the kind of 50s and 60s, and mum recalls fully like, oh yeah, you can wake up in the morning and there can be young children, things like that in the house. And so I imagine those assessments of the environment are some of the hardest things that you'll both have in your respective roles, to make sure that young people and young children kind of going into these environments are safe and are in places where there isn't judgment from anyone in the family. And I imagine that's a difficult balance if there's already kids in there. Yes,
that's another thing. You need to match the child if there's already children in the placement. So you need to, or there's birth children or grandchildren who are visiting long. So there's a real process about matching so that you don't disrupt the current situation.
Marie, from your side with the local authority, what's the struggles there within the social housing providers you've got then? Because I know Naisha is going to come onto her slide in a moment. So with the social housing side, is that harder again?
Yeah, it is one of them situations. It's because there's a huge increase in say like domestic violence issues within the house, all that sort of thing. But going back to what Daisha's just said about matching, unfortunately, we haven't always got that chance or that time, because if a child comes in as an emergency,
Yes.
it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you can't do no matching.
No,
You just
no
find
matching.
you're
Just find a
finding them a
bed.
bed. You're finding a bed for them. If
Mm.
especially the last few weeks, we've had sibling groups that have in at 5 o'clock on a Friday, staff are sitting ringing around trying to find somewhere for the children to go. Obviously we always try, I'm going to be generally try to place them internal before we have to go out to agencies
That's
such
right.
as NICEAS, because obviously
Mhm.
cost implication is it's cheaper to keep them internal than it is to send them. Plus, we can sometimes have to send children out of area because we just won't have anywhere in area, and it's not ideal. If you come from Stoke-on-Trent and then we have to send you down to London, you don't know nobody, you don't fit in, you don't know the culture, the environment, even your accent. You're going to stand out a mile. Massive. Stoke used to think our accent, we don't think we've got an accent, but everybody tells us we have. You know, it's massive.
Sometimes they've got no choice.
Yes.
It's massive. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. And so I just thought about what kind of things can social housing help and I just came up recently due to COVID. We need 80,000 foster households. It has really. When I started Banya, we needed. There was a shortage of 15,000, and I thought, oh my God, I haven't done really. I'm a drop in the ocean. There's such a huge need for foster carers and people to come forward to look after these children. And now with the unaccompanied minors, it's even, and the issue about siblings, as though Maria, is that siblings have been separated because people don't have big houses. We find we've got separate, and that's just awful to separate siblings.
But sometimes you can have sibling groups of 10. So there's no way you're ever going to keep able to keep together, or it's impossible.
We've had
it's a children's
that.
home, isn't it?
11. Yes.
Yeah. So can you open up your slide on how social housing can help, Nasha?
Yes, I was thinking that to have a flexible tenant agreement, I've had quite a few.
Can you click on it? It's not showing up on the page again.
No, sorry, I'm not good.
Okay, lovely, thank you.
To just have tenant agreement. I've had applicants who have because we need landlord's permission, because social housing association will be the landlord, and they've not been allowed. They say they're not your birth children, you cannot foster. So we've lost. So this issue about social housing, being aware of the need, and just because someone is fostering, I think they should have the same rights as if these children were the birth children, because if they had birth children, that's no problem for them. So why can't they extend that to children in the care system?
I think that's because now, don't you think there becomes a myth? If you're fostered, there's going to be trouble. So landlords are straight away because it's just going to bring trouble to my property. And
yes,
that's how
it's going to bring trouble.
And yet that's the same with social housing landlords, who tend to support those who are most at need anyway. So that must be a big frustration for both of you.
Yes. And say, why would they're already looking after the most vulnerable, and children in the care system, they're the most vulnerable for all people. And yes, people have got such they think foster children have got two heads or something. It's the minute you mention foster children in the care system, the landlord don't want to know. That's too much problem.
But is that partly because of media? Because I mean, I know this isn't me being rude about it, but when I think of any films or anything like that to do with fostering, the first one you go to is Oliver Twist, which is mental. Yeah. But there aren't any others that really tell the story, that haven't been mainstream in that way.
Yes, we need
stories of actually kids coming out of care that have gone in and gone into fostering, because fostering isn't something that is talked about on the, as we talked about earlier, talked about mainstream media, never mind having TV and film about it.
So films are always quite negative, aren't they, around children that are in care?
They're always negative. They're labelled as problem children, and they're not problem children at all. They're just like any other child. They need care.
Just children. That's all they are.
They're just children. And yeah, that's another reason why people don't come to fostering as well, because of this media, and that they're problem children. And a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to foster. I can't be dealing with the problems which comes with it. It's not just social housing who have a problem with this, it's just a society problem. That's why there's a shortage. Yeah, and social housing can help carers within the agency to just support them, to acknowledge what they're doing, that this is a good thing for you to do, and also to promote it, to promote fostering. You've got a spare room, your child has left home. Why don't you decide to foster in terms of the housing, social housing?
We've just done a big and around rooms where we're saying to people, you've been working at home for 2 years, so that what was your office, you're now going back to the main office. Could that become a bedroom? And we've done big on that. What I will say in Stoke as well, you don't have to have a spare room if you foster under twos.
Yes,
one need is so great, they can keep the baby in the foster carer's room.
Yes,
spare bedroom.
So you can have the baby in the spare room, and that's very interesting, because a lot of people always also think that they need to have a spare room, and some local authority don't want. They put. That's very interesting, Maria. You should say that some local authority said even if the child can go, the room should always be available. And I said, but they're a baby. Oh, anyway, it's another debate.
We are quite unique.
Yeah, that's very unique actually to have.
We are quite unique in Stoke for that purpose.
I'm listening to this. I mean, things like the bedroom tax, under occupancy tax won't have helped this, because you've moved out a lot of people who could have had a spare room and things like that anyway. But equally, I've got friends, acquaintances, people I've known for years who've struggled through IVF, who've struggled through other forms of contraception, trying to get pregnant, etc. And yet, we need 80,000 foster carers. So
you are a foster carer, you don't pay bedroom tax.
But
yes.
do you?
Yes, we campaign.
Do you need the property? I think a lot of people who had the spare room got moved out.
Yes.
Yeah, they did.
But then I guess then that would resolve it. If you've got the spare room, you're not sure what to do, and you can obviously you're not going to go into a house which is full of, if somebody has got severe mental health needs or whatever else, evidently there are safeguarding checks. But if someone can pass the safeguarding checks, and that is a viable solution for how to support a sector that's most in need, and yet you don't hear about this as an option.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just ask a couple of things? And
please do, Michael. Yeah.
Forgive my ignorance, because I don't know much about this.
I'm learning as well.
Yeah. Is there, if you look at private ownership and social housing, is there a disproportionate representation in certain areas? I.e., are there more foster carers in private ownership than there are in social housing?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
So, and if I understand correctly, if you're a registered foster carer, then you wouldn't be subject to the bedroom tax debacle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And is there an underrepresentation in certain cultural or minority groups?
Yes.
Yes.
Certainly in Stoke. Absolutely. Yes.
And when you're looking at placing a foster child, I guess there is consideration to the cultural identity.
Definitely. Right. When you're doing your matching.
Okay.
So although we're short of 80,000, would you say that there needs to almost be a bigger increase in non-white communities in terms of getting people in the non-white community? Is that where one of the biggest issues is?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And they said in London in particular, there's a disproportionate number of children in the care system who are Black or mixed race or Asian compared to the population. So Lambeth, for example, it's got something like 5% of the population is diverse, and something like 70% of the children in the care system are from diverse backgrounds.
In Stoke, we're probably the other way around.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
Stoke is just
it's incredibly white.
London and Stoke, the difference. Yes.
Yes.
So how? I mean, what are your thoughts on how social housing can help with this?
I'm going to just take the thing down, because then we can open up the conversation a little bit more. So I'm just going to turn off the presentation just a moment. Cool.
I think it's going back to what Naisha said earlier. It's about promoting side. If social housing was saying that, yes, you've got this house, it's got a spare bedroom, we're going to encourage you to foster. What we are in Stoke, we are a fostering friendly authority, and we're actually out there actively getting companies to become fostering friendly. So we've currently got like Bet365 Stoke City football ground, basically
Lovely,
football.
yeah.
Our local, which is Unitas, that does all the works on the houses.
Yeah,
goes
all
out, all
right,
the
yeah.
social housing and all that goes out and does that. So they're all becoming fostering
So what
friendly.
does
So they're all
fostering
pushed.
friendly mean?
Okay. So
Yes.
you become fostering friendly yourself as an authority. So your policy is made based on you. It's a fostering network thing. So you have to put policy together. So what you're saying to your staff is, we'll give you this amount of days off for training each year. If you have a new child to come and live with you, we'll give you a few days off work.
Yeah.
We'll be flexible if you've got to do the school run.
Yeah.
It's around all that, about working with them, and
Yeah.
encouraging them to come forward.
And when foster carers need to attend like reviews, school, school meetings, appointments with CAMS or doctor's appointment, yes. So
Do foster carers get the same rights as parents?
No,
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 not at all.
That's the whole
a
thing.
big legislation issue then in terms of
They've technically got no rights around
no rights.
being
No.
foster care, none whatsoever.
No,
but by getting organisations to be fostering friendly, they're saying we will support our foster care. So we hope they're getting out there and getting the message out saying, go be a foster care because we will support you. It's also good for the company because they can advertise that they're fostering friendly. So come work for us.
Yes.
Because we're an understanding, working with the community, working with the local authority.
That's very, very good.
For advertising.
I've never thought of that, Maria. But I'm always saying, why are these companies not so friendly around foster carers? And they will say, oh, they're not your children, so you can't take that leave.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think social housing is missed a trick here because in my last role at Metropolitan Thames Valley, they recently went out to tender for new 5-year framework agreements to the tune of 700 million or whatever it might be. And within the contracts, there was a lot in there about the contractors having a social conscience and providing social value.
Yeah.
About providing apprenticeships, providing funds for community halls, decarbonisation and things like that. But there was nothing in there about something such as this. And this falls into the social conscience arena, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Absolutely.
It does.
Quite interesting.
You're really helping children in the society who have got really good horrendous needs and need somewhere to live.
And what we do with them as well, we work very closely with them. So we make sure they've got posters, leaflets, flyers, all things to put out around their workplace that they can use on their social media to tell everybody that they're a fostering friendly organisation. It's positive for them as well.
Yes.
I'm very aware we've got Amanda and Michelle in the room. If you guys want to jump in at any point, please feel free. If you just want to put something in the chat, then also feel free. But I guess the question I want to ask, I guess either Marie or Nasha, how easy is it to become a foster carer?
It can be very easy, but it can also be quite difficult. And that's another thing which puts people off because of the process. You've got to be checked, you've got to do a Form F. The assessment can take up to, it should really take 8 months. But because of waiting for checks, and it can take a long time to actually become a foster carer.
We work on a 16 to 20 week basis.
That's what we're trying to do as well.
To approval. But it is evasive. I always say you're going to live in a goldfish bowl.
Yes.
Because we want to know everything about you. Checks on you.
For that 4 to 5 months or throughout
your life as a foster carer. You've got no privacy. You're looking after the children in the public sector, so your life becomes public knowledge. You know what I mean? It's so intrusive.
Yeah. And you'll have your own social worker that is going to visit you at least once every 6 weeks. The child will have their own social worker that's going to visit you at least once a week. You're going to have meeting, personal education plans, medicals. It's very intrusive, not just for you, for your whole family, really. Everybody living in your household.
And we need to know who's coming to your household, and we can turn up and announce and we can ask questions. Who is this person? and you in normal life, do people ask you who is visiting your house? So we do.
Well, we ask
So
to keep a record.
how would you improve that then? I guess from your side of it, from having both worked in the sector, is that completely necessary? This is me
Yes.
talking completely, yeah. Or is it a case of, okay.
It's about protecting the child, isn't it?
Child.
So what happens, I'll give you an example. We had a child that once told her social worker that a man had been in her bedroom at the foster carer's house. Foster care went into a meltdown, which means there's been a man in the bedroom. Luckily, we always say to foster carers, if people visit your house, keep a note. So she went back to her files, and there was a man. It was a teacher training day. The children were in the back garden, and their window cleaner cleans inside and outside. So there was a man in the bedroom, but she was in the garden. If she just said there was a man in my bedroom, and you hadn't kept a record of that, and 6 months later, how are you going to explain yourself? But she could by saying, yes, it was the window cleaner, but the children were in the bedroom, in the garden at the time.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's essential. Protect yourself as a foster carer.
As a foster carer, you need to protect yourself.
It's weird, isn't it? Because anybody can, or most people can have a child, and there's no scrutiny whatsoever, and you just crack on and
Everybody should have training before they have children.
Yes.
I'm going to ask a question, and I don't know whether it's an absolute ridiculous question that ought to be shot down or not. I don't know, but because I don't know the answer. But in social housing, as we know, there's huge waiting lists for properties. If somebody was a registered foster carer, would it be appropriate for them to have priority on that list?
That's what
our point of view, we're going to say yes, aren't we?
Yes, we're definitely say yes.
But how is a foster carer seen if they're applying for properties at the moment? Does it have any effect at all? Is it seen positively or negatively?
What we would do is sometimes we'd have people come forward and say, I'd like to foster, but I only live in this one-bedroomed house, got 2 children. If you find me a house with 3 bedrooms, I'll foster. We absolutely cannot do that.
Okay.
Because they might say that and then they'd never come forward to foster, and they've got, it's about getting housing. So it's about looking at that, the reasons behind it. But if they're already foster carers and they're saying to us, well, yeah, I could take more, but I need a bigger house, we'd send them over to housing. We've still got no control over it.
We've got no control of it, no. Absolutely no control.
That was the reason.
That must be frustrating.
Can be, yeah. We also have connected carers that have got their grandchildren and grandparents maybe sleeping on the sofa because there's not really enough room. If there's social housing, we will go and they might request it, but we've still got no control over it.
No.
I think that was the reason for my question, really, because you've got to question people's motivation, haven't you?
Yes.
And that's so. If they are already registered foster carers and have proven themselves over a period, then that's something very different to somebody applying. Well, I'd like to be a foster carer, so I can jump.
Yes, I know. I've got a foster carer.
You need 80,000, though, isn't it?
Yes, I know a foster carer in London who lives in a housing association, and she's since had, when she fostered, she only had 1 child. She's since had 2 more children with us. She's been fostering for nearly 25 years now, and she's in a housing association. And for the last 10 years, she stopped fostering now. She's no longer a resource to us because the housing association won't move her to a bigger house. She's on this exchange program. She put her name down. She's on exchange program because she now doesn't have any room to foster. They won't move her. They say you've got enough accommodation for you and your family, but she's fostered for us for 25 years, and it's such a
one, isn't it? Because you've got a lot of people within social housing, certainly not all, obviously, but you've got some people that will move into a 2-bedroom property and then proceed to have another, 3, 4, 5 children.
Yes.
And then expect to be moved to a greater property. And now, if you own your own home, you kind of have children, or a lot of people have children according to their needs and financial situation.
That's right.
So sometimes it can be seen as a route to a larger property, but it doesn't work that way, So this is why you get a lot of, we used to get a lot of complaints from MPs that people are overcrowded. Well, they weren't when they moved into the property.
Yes. Yes.
Then on the flip side, as you say, if you've got the room in your house and you can foster, and you're being blocked because you live in social housing,
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah,
is that is the flip side of that exact argument, Michael, which is okay, well, you come in, you can pass all the compliance checks, you've done your monitoring, you've been through the 6 to 12 weeks, sorry, 16 to 20 weeks.
Yes.
You go through the process and you're told no, because you live in social housing. And that seems to be, you know, the bigger issue. And I imagine actually the same issue comes up with a lot of private landlords. You know, if I rent and I've got a spare room, but I'm pretty certain my landlord, if I tell myself I want to become a foster carer, they would go, no, that wasn't the agreement that we had. We wanted, in my case, two young professionals, and you know, and that was the thing that comes through. So I do think there's this stigma certainly with, and I think it's a bit like social housing in general, and then, you know, fostering alongside it, a stigma that goes with the sector of what people who are living in care, living in social housing, have been through the care sector, what children or what people who've been through the sectors are actually like, because they're not good people in some way. And that is definitely a stigma that still holds true.
Yes, definitely. It definitely is a stigma. And we need to train, we really need to train landlords. I know just before Christmas, we had 3 foster carers. The landlords, completely separate landlords, just turned up that we sold your house. And thank goodness they didn't have actually any child in the care system. I don't know what would have done. They've moved back to their family home, to their mother and parents, 3 of them. And the landlord just said, "Oh, I sold the house."
A lot of finding that a lot with landlords, private landlords at the moment, are selling up because of the housing market, etc. Sorry, Michael, you had a question.
Yeah. Is it? I mean, obviously within social housing, there's various tenures. You've got your general needs, your social rent, your cap ones, but you've also got your market rent. Is it? If it's a market rent property, have you noticed? Is there any difference there? Are the landlords more accepting of people taking foster children if they're in market rent as opposed to?
Can you just tell me what market rent is?
A lot of or most social landlords now build properties to sell and also to rent on the open market. So they would command a normal rent as a private rent. So you have different tenures. So you've got a market rent where people would pay, as an example, a market rent property might command £500 a month, as an example, where
but definitely it's weird because they're kind of between social housing rent and it's meant to be affordable rent. I know Bourneville Village Trust recently, when I was looking to rent, kind of move house a couple of years ago, they said, "We'll have a look at our market rent stock," and they didn't happen to have any available. But when we were looking at their stock from 6 months ago, there's a house. It was a 3-bed house in a really nice area, and it was about £500 or £600 a month compared to £900 on the general market. So it's affordable rent.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is, and this would generally be for people that are working. Say generally, not always, but also you could have, if you look at a block of flats for an example, you could have mixed tenures in there. So you could have market rent tenants and you can have social rent tenants. And exactly the same property might be a difference of £200 a month, where the market rent would be more expensive. They would say that generally the letting standards, once it's let, are slightly improved on the market rent as opposed to social rent, but in reality they're not that much different really anyway.
Yes. All right. I've not heard about that, but I know social housing and council housing rent is cheaper than private.
Yeah,
it's definitely cheaper.
And Marie, for you, working for the local authority itself, what is your kind of, and we've got about 15 minutes, so what is your biggest frustration at the moment with with the fostering sector as a whole, I guess? And I appreciate that's a broad question, but if there's one thing you're going, even if it's a small thing, that this is what we have to change first or have to change now, what would it be for you? And then Naisha, I'm going to come to you with the same question.
I think our biggest issue is, and Stoke, it's the myths around fostering. We don't tend to have many landlords that tell us no, we can't foster, but in honesty, not many people that live in social housing come forward to foster either. The vast majority own their property that come forward. It's the myths around fostering is our biggest frustration. What stops people coming forward. It doesn't matter how many times you go out there and say it. If somebody comes back and say, oh, I was going to apply 5 years ago, but I know you won't have me because of,
yes.
oh,
Wow.
you just want to
Why
sink
do
in your
people
chair.
think they
Yes,
can't?
I know.
It's I'm saying I'm in a same-sex couple, so you won't have me. I'm not married.
Yes,
I'm single.
yeah. I'm fat.
I don't. Yes, I'm fat. That's another one.
I
Yeah,
smoke.
I'd never get through the medical. Yeah,
Good.
I smoke. So the list just goes on.
It's
It
endless.
could go on forever.
Endless. Yes.
Forever. For myths
Yeah.
around
I've got a document which I call the myth busting, which I send just a flyer. I think about 20 things there,
we send it out all the time. It's on social media all the time.
It's very, very useful. But it just people
add
smoking.
Smoking, you can't foster under 5, so that's partly true.
Yeah,
That's
partly
where the confusion
true.
comes to that.
Yeah, it's partly true, but
5s.
I work full time. All sorts of things.
And do people talk about the costs of it? You know, I couldn't afford to be a fosterer. Like, 'cause I don't know what in terms of financial
really. I've
support
never
they
heard
get.
that. I've never heard that.
So I'll go slightly different on that. I think that is why we tend to have a lot where they could possibly afford for one of them not to work. But don't forget, our living is probably a lot cheaper up here than it is
in London,
in London area. So we tend to find that. So if you live in social housing and you both need to work, or people worry about it affecting the benefits as well if they don't work. It doesn't really pay enough with your local authority to foster, if I'm honest. If you're going to give up your job, certainly not in that first year. Because what happens is, and it does happen, obviously we have children aged 0 to 18, the vast majority of under 7s we place internal. It's the older children that usually go out to independent fostering agencies because they're the children that we can't place internal. So you'll find most agencies have got older children when they're looking for fostering families. They're looking for fostering families with older children, where it is better money for the older children. But if people have the choice, most will go for younger children because we don't know where that crossover happens. I think it was something you said earlier about how people see children in care as being bad and all that sort of thing. What we find is when they're aged under 8, it's what them poor children, what have the parents done? When they get older, it suddenly becomes, what has the child done? Nothing. They're the same children when they were 5.
Children have grown up.
They just happen to be 9 now. The same children that have grown up in the same environment. But that's society. That's about changing people's perspective. Yeah, they'll say, oh, well, when you have a 10-year-old, they'll do this and do that. Well, yes, so will any other typical 10-year-old do that. Just because they're in care doesn't mean that behaviour will happen.
Is it usually people who've already got kids that choose to be fosterers then?
No.
Do you think no? Okay.
No. I went to see a couple last night and I've already had that. The applications just popped up on the screen and they're both teachers, no children of their own.
Yes, no, it doesn't matter.
Their applications
teacher-wise, I guess they'll have behavioural.
If they're teachers, they've got experience of, they've got transferable skills. You know what I mean? They've worked with children. You know what I mean? It's just, anyone. You don't have to have children to have. But,
I guess you have experience. I guess my question there was about actual hands-on experience. So teachers, I guess, would be a great one. For example, myself, if I looked at it when I've got a 12-year-old coming in, I'd have no idea where to start.
But saying that, we've had people that are aged 25, never parented, anything like that, and they make excellent foster carers.
I know.
Then you can have somebody that's worked the whole life in teaching.
Yes, and they find it
a foster child, and they give a notice within weeks and give up fostering.
We've had that. We've had social workers become foster carers. It's almost like a disadvantage that they should be. You know what I mean? They're not very good foster carers.
I don't
what
think
makes a good foster carer?
I think you've got. I think this sounds really cliche because it really does. It's a calling. That sounds.
Yes, really, I do agree with you.
Say it's got. You can either do it or you can't.
Yes.
I can hand on heart say this is terrible. I'm a recruitment officer, but I couldn't be a foster carer. I take my hat off to every foster carer. I think they do a good job.
Oh no, I definitely.
But I cannot be a foster carer.
My foster carer, they're my unsung heroes. I have fostered for Westminster myself, but it takes that kind of that's kind of special person to want to do it. Just by actually going through the process, it's really being assessed to become you're thrown up with lots of challenges. You've got to share your private life. And if you can go through that, you really, there's something worth there. I definitely do. And this, really, it's just fantastic. It's a fantastic thing to do.
You've got to have the commitment, haven't you? You've got the commitment,
the commitment, yes,
the love, the care. You've just got to have it.
I also say that you have to, you really have to love, not like, you need to like and love children.
And the biggest thing is resilience. You've
got to have some resilience. Yes,
you are in trouble.
You're in trouble.
Absolutely. Michael, I know you had a question there.
Yeah. Do the foster again? It might be a daft question. Do foster carers get paid?
Yes. An allowance.
Right. So would that allowance impinge upon any benefits that they're entitled to, or
no?
Right.
As a foster carer, even if you're a taxpayer, you get an additional £10,000 tax allowance.
Yes, that's right.
Right. So if there was two people in social housing and for valid reasons neither of them worked and they wanted to become foster carers, any allowances that they received wouldn't affect their housing benefits or anything.
That's another myth, which people
say, I will lose my benefits.
I'm going to lose my benefits. It's another myth which needs busting.
Right.
And even it'll affect my pension, because some people, when they retire, that's probably the perfect time. If you're fit and you're healthy and you can look after a young person, you've got all this time on your hands. It's the ideal time. And then they start thinking, but it's going to affect your pension, it's going to affect this payment, and it isn't.
And what's the shortest and longest time you could have a foster child? I was going to call it an assignment. I realize that almost sounds like I don't know what the terminology is.
It could be 1 night. It can be.
It could be 1 night. It could be. I've had an hour. We couldn't find the mother, and there was some misunderstanding between.
So if someone does come in, and I don't know, say for example, like someone's like, yeah, I could do it, and then actually, a few years down the line or whatever, they don't want to. What's the longest one stint with one child? I guess
I'll give you an example. One of our foster carers had a young person go live with them when they were 7 for 2 weeks. They left when they were 19.
Wow.
Yes,
I've got a foster care. That didn't then become adoption. That was a constant fostering.
No, it was long-term fostering. It's I've had one.
So why would you keep fostering rather than adopt? That's just me, in terms of it.
It's a different legal
assessment. It's a different
assessment.
Okay.
Totally different. It's a lot longer. Your adoption is obviously.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
So if I was to say, if we look at the barriers to potential adopters coming forward, obviously we've got some of the myths surrounding benefits. We've got the challenges with regards to cross-cultural issues and placements such as that. But we've also got the intrusiveness into somebody's lives, which would be the main barrier or issue for people, do you think?
I think that's different for each person.
Right.
Some people don't like the intrusiveness. The others say, I can't do with it having knowing all these questions. Part of the assessment, that's why the assessment takes so long, and you keep your assessing social worker till you go to panel, because they're getting to know you really well and they pick up on your personality questions. Lots of things get raised. So I think, Matt, you said earlier, if you got all the way to the end and then realised you couldn't do because you hadn't got the room, we wouldn't get that far. We'd know that right at the beginning, and we'd say, until this is resolved, we can't do this. If an issue came along, they'd deal with that issue. If it couldn't be resolved, we'd stop the assessment there. So lots of people pull out. You can have probably 20 applicants in, and you're going to lose at least 6 of them before you get to panel.
Right. Okay. So it's quite a 25.
That's my experience. And and one of the barriers is accommodation. It's actually having a spare room. I would say more, maybe 50% of persons phone me today, they won't have enough space. So that excludes them immediately. immediately.
That kind of comes right back around to them, the cost of housing,
And
the cost of homes,
housing.
and having the space to do so.
Yes.
But by the sounds of it, there's an awful lot of people out there who do have the space as well, and either can't become foster carers or don't want to because of this almost unconscious bias that goes with it.
That's right. Yeah. Yes.
So Amanda's just put in the chat there.
But I would say in the intrusiveness, it's a big one.
Right, brilliant. So Amanda's just put in the chat, just to let you know that we have recognised foster carers our home choice plus allocations policy and Redditch homes allocation policy.
Wow.
Allow for direct matching when
That's
additional bedroom is required. It is interesting, though, to see the response to the Ukrainian sponsorship scheme, which is something I know Marie and I talked about briefly before we started today, and how many people have come forward to offer accommodation. Is there more that can be done to raise awareness of fostering the current need for places? I'm thinking of really high-profile TV advert campaigns. If you have any info on being a foster-friendly employer, please can you let me know so I can pass it on to senior managers for consideration. And obviously Michelle, Marie's put, we did talk about this earlier, and I agree. And that is definitely, you know, when I first spoke to Nasha, and obviously when Marie and I were speaking beforehand about this, suddenly lots of people have got room, they have got space. When they're told they're going to get £500-600 a month or whatever it'll be, they can suddenly do it. And yet foster caring, which is so needed, do you think that's for some people because it's a longer term commitment, or do you feel that it's, I don't know, what do you think, you know, from, I guess, from Marie or Nasha, from your experience so far, what do you feel is the difference? Why do you think people have been so comfortable jumping onto the Ukrainian side of things when they haven't looked at the fostering?
Because it isn't on the I'll go back to the children being in care is something that happens to people they don't know. It doesn't happen on the doorstep. And I fully really agree that if we could get that TV campaign and we were being talked about on every news channel, we would have people coming forward to foster. We would still have people coming forward to foster. I think if we could get that TV coverage, it's just not something the media are just not interested in, if I'm honest.
And why do you feel that is? Is that because of kind of central government at the moment, or do you think it's just because, to me, this is bizarre? That
yes.
I had no idea.
It's really bizarre.
There was
yes.
80,000 foster carers. But that's a huge amount of people.
Yeah, needed, yes. And it's just bizarre what, and I think it's because the children in the care system don't have a voice. We need to really create champions within the media, with the and awareness about what happens to children. They're sort of really the bottom of the ladder in terms of having a voice. They don't vote.
Michael also put about the financial difference. I think the difference you've got to be realistic as well, which I don't think people are thinking around the Ukraine issue, is once them children are living with you and they've done the checks and they come, or the families, if a family comes to live with you, and they've done all the checks and everything, you're then on your own.
Yes.
With fostering, they're still getting the financial support, but you are never on your own.
You're never on your own. You've got so much support.
Full support. So
yeah.
Then again, and I mean, obviously there was a lot of things with the Ukrainian side of things about how stringent the checks were to begin with, and evidently there's been, unfortunately, a hell of a lot of safeguarding issues that's come out because of that. And you know, I do think that unfortunately some people with the Ukrainian side of it were in it just to make money rather than to, unfortunately, support who was needed.
Is there an opportunity there, though, Matt? Because, you know, for those that have expressed an interest in housing Ukrainians, you know, is there an opportunity there to target them as potential foster carers?
Well, you'd imagine they would be the people you go to first, wouldn't you? Because
we're jumping on that one in Stoke, if I'm honest. We are jumping on that one.
Yes, we are. We're saying, yes, we definitely need to jump on. And it's quite interesting that the fostering fortnight coming up, that how can you include it in the promotion while they're talking about housing Ukraine, and say, look, while you're there, why don't you become a foster carer and you look after the kids? Because they're going to come into the care system.
100%.
So, but I don't know how we, you know, it's almost like we need to have a joint collaboration of how we can get this. Who are they contacting that they want to? Are they contacting you, Maria, in the local authority? that they want to house, and who is going to assess them? Are they going to be assessed to be all?
That the assessment isn't quite what people think. That the checks are done, but it isn't like a fostering assessment.
No, it's just a hosting.
It's just a housing assessment. So, but what we're saying is people that put themselves forward, if it's deemed that maybe taking in a Ukrainian family isn't suitable, but maybe they could look at being foster carers, because we think they've got something where they can offer something, but that we believe that they still need that support behind them. And so we're just looking at ways of crossing the two over into each other. And maybe the other way around, somebody that applies to be foster care and think, well, actually, we don't think fostering's for you, but that might be weird.
Yeah, of course.
So we are looking both ways.
Okay.
Michelle, I've just seen that you've come off chat. Will you jump in? Did you want to come in with a point?
I wanted to say, the Ukrainian situation is such a...
Really sorry, I can't hear you. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Just about, yeah, just about.
Just about.
Yeah, I think the situation with the Ukrainians is that it's such a shocking and a new situation in that we're watching people subject to war, whereas normally with our foster children or children who need our assistance, they're just there in the background, and you sort of out. I mean, I don't work in foster care at all, so I'm just speaking as a complete lay person. But the children who need assistance are just here all the time, whereas being confronted with the Ukrainian situation on the news, there's blood, there's bombs, there's people who have been displaced. The men are saying to fight, the women have to bring the children and the old people out. That kind of, it's a visual thing, I think, and it may even be, we're to say a romantic thing in that I can save these people from the terrible situation they're in. Whereas the children who are here with us every day in London or Manchester or wherever, they're just there, and they don't have the same high profile, and they're not on the news. It's not me making a judgment on.
Yes, definitely.
Come forward, but it just is what it is. It just is what it is. We don't see children foster care on the news every day, but we're seeing people who are minding their own business on Monday. And the last news report, a 3-month-old baby was murdered by somebody dropping a bomb on the family's apartment.
And I think within that comes a point there along the lines of, suddenly you're going, oh, well, if they're coming from Ukraine, well, they're all good kids. The only reason they're coming over is because of the war. Rather than where in this country going, oh, well, there's good homes, there's families with alcohol and drug issues, or they're probably going to have the same, or they're probably that. It's all the stigma that immediately goes with it that unfortunately, isn't coming over with the Ukraine and isn't coming. And again, the fact that we've had Syrian refugees and Afghanistan refugees and everything else that have needed homes for years, and suddenly because it's the Ukraine, that's a whole nother conversation. But I'm conscious of the time and people having more meetings. So thank you everybody for coming today. This is obviously a topic that can run and run. I definitely want to be able to kind of rerun this and have a look at some of the other points. I think really interesting to know. Amazingly fact-finding information today for both himself, and I know Michael will definitely agree in terms of the myths around it, what you can do, what you can't do, whether the issues are. There's obviously a big thing there about what social housing providers can do to better support it. But also, just as you say, that narrative around 80,000 foster carers needed, and actually, however many thousands and thousands of people did apply for Ukraine, well, there's got to be some there. So what can we do to support that? Thank you, Nasha, for coming on today. Thank you, Marie, Michael, Michelle, Amanda, for joining me and for joining in the conversation. I'll get the recording sent out and put together anyway so that you can share it with any teams you've got. But if there's anything I can do to support with this, please let me know. I'm happy putting stuff out on my social media and promoting the voice from there.
Thank you very much, Mark. And I definitely would like to keep in touch. Maria, I think I'll try and connect with you on LinkedIn.